Hello and welcome to round 2 of the Player of the Year Megadraft. We are going to be watching one of the semifinals. We're going to be watching Dan, the winner of the match we just saw, up against Sawyer, who won the match that was versus Paul, and that was the last match to finish, so people did get a bit of a look at Sawyer's red-black deck. But we're going to be on Dan's POV. We are going to be following from the side of the Boros aggro player against the Rakdos. Well, I'm not sure how much of a Steel and Sack player he wound up being. We didn't get a look at the full deck build. We just saw a couple cards in play down the end. But Evan, what do you expect to see from Sawyer's side in this match?
From Sawyer's side, well, we definitely saw that he had First Strike and Trample on his big Torgar 7/6 from Hexgold Halberd, and he's got two of them. So one thing I can imagine we'll be seeing a good bit of is that equipment getting moved around and really impacting the board.
Yeah, that's the sort of card which, if you're attacking, it's fantastic. But when you're not attacking, it doesn't do anything. It does not give First Strike or Trample. It just sits there, waiting to attack. So potentially some of Sawyer's cards, which it looked from what we saw like he was the faster deck in the first match. Some of them are going to be certainly in a different context, where very much we are expecting Dan to be the beat down for this match.
Mhm. And Colin from one of our loyal viewers, Adam, has messaged me to say that Sawyer stole and sacked a mutated Nethroid versus Paul. So definitely on some mutating and sacking action. And
yeah, I guess I got to take back my my calling Nethroid the most unbeatable card that was open today, because it sounds like Sawyer did beat it pretty effectively there.
There might have been a tentative connection that you made there.
Do we know what's going on with the match from Sawyer's side? I think Dan's screen is stuck, or the match is stuck.
Yeah, Sawyer has sent a challenge.
Okay, I will just message them both, restart arena,
Yeah,
and make the challenge.
it seems like that's going to be what we're going to have to do. Maybe we restart the recording as well.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to at least pause the recording, and we'll join the intro onto whatever happens next. Alright, false start has been averted. It looks like we have both players. They are in the match, and we're going to get to watch them. And we're going to see who wins play draw. It looks like Dan has won the die roll. He's presumably going to play first. They wish in each other, GLHF, and we've got a keepable hand here. We've got Lauren's Escape, Aether Chaser, Benalis Marshall, and Chimney Rabble as our curve. We can't quite curve out because we've only got 2 plains, 1 mountain, but we can at least play Aether Chaser, make a servo, which is going to be good for that Warlord's Lead we just drew. What's happening over on Sawyer's side?
Interestingly enough, he has kept a 5-lander and has drawn 2 lands off the top. His only other cards are Memory Leak and Torgar, and I think Memory Leak is actually going to be coming into play as his 3-drop play. And fortunately, one of these lands is a Desert of the Glorified, and I think that's he'll be cycling in order to try to get some action to stop this beat down that's being brought upon him.
Speaking of cycling, we've got the cat itself, Survive Thundermane, gonna look a lot better, I would expect, in this matchup against red-black than it did against the giant green monsters, just because the creatures are smaller that you wind up hitting. Sheesh. Yeah, Sawyer is in some trouble here if that was his keep, and this is his play here.
Yeah, the cycle off the land was a land, his next draw was a land, and then he had to cycle Memory Leak in order to finally just find a simple Exuberant Fuseling.
It looks like he's going to get to do the thing. He's going to cycle Startling Development, shoot your play. This is, I think, everything Dan dreamed of when he put this deck together. Did not draw land 4, though.
Another land for Sawyer. The funny thing is, Alex Straza, Torgar, might come into play just to give him a decent chunk of life, perhaps,
Is that his
if
only
he can
non-land in
somehow
hand?
survive. That's his only non-land.
So he would need to draw a creature, have it survive, and then sack it immediately to go back up to 10 life. I'm
Yes.
not saying it's impossible, but I don't know if I'm quite buying that as a way to winning this game. Well, okay. That's presumably good when your hand's full of lands.
Hmm.
Okay, no, he's dead.
Yeah, he ended up just drawing a Blazing Crescendo at the end
That's,
there.
I mean, maybe that's how you play Boros. You just have your opponents flood out every game. That's good business if you can get into it. So what are we looking at for sideboards here? Because I imagine Sawyer's going to have more changes to make than Dan.
Yeah. So far, he's just looking at the board, trying to get a read on everything that he's seen so far. Um, he has a couple of things to potentially lower the curve a bit. He might not play his tentative connection, but for now, no changes. Also, a random note is that both of these players ended up defeating a base black green deck in
Ooh,
round one.
interesting. So
Uh,
yeah, the Golgari brigade suffering substantial losses early
mhm.
on.
They'll be back, I'm sure.
That is sort of the way of things. They do keep coming back, the Golgari. Interesting
Yeah.
sideboard options for Dan. Like Keldon
Mhm.
Overseer is a maybe. Aethersmith the Renegade, the energy-based pinger I saw him hovering, but didn't wind up putting it in. I don't think he's changed a single card yet that I've seen.
And so far, there's a lot of hovering, but the reality is that there's, perhaps not that
Ooh.
much that he can put in. He's put to the side Dark Bargain as a card draw spell that loses you life, and
Hmm.
maybe you don't want to be doing that when you're faced with red white aggro deck. And then the Tentative Connection to steal and sack. He might say, "Well, I think my stuff's bigger than your stuff, and I think even if I'm on the play, that this is more likely to end up not necessarily winning me the game and could put me in a bad spot otherwise."
We did see two cuts now for Dan. He took out a pacifism, which against red black sack, that makes some sense, and he took out the Pursue Glory, which is the trumpet blast with cycling. He's put in one card. I did not see what it was, and he's still got to add one more. And we're going to see. I promise, I'm going to see what it is.
On Sawyer's side, he's put in a sparring construct,
Oh, is that just the one
and
that dies into a 1/1?
it's the one that dies into a counter.
Okay, right. Thank you. I think Eddie Trail Hawk was the card I saw Dan add. The energy bird that can jump a creature twice, as I recall.
Yeah, that seems like a fairly good inclusion. One thing that I think I might have been interested in seeing Sawyer bring in, which he hasn't, doesn't look like he is going to be doing, but let me just look it up to make sure it's the card I'm thinking of. Yeah, I think Prickly Marmoset, 3 mana, 2/3
Hmm.
first strike. I think that has legs
That might
in
just be big
this sort
enough
of matchup.
against Dan's creatures, and he's got an
Yeah,
interesting
just big
team
enough.
here.
And I think the first strike can be potentially quite relevant.
Okay, Dan's running pretty well here. He kept a two-lander with plains, and one drop, two drop, but needed to draw the mountain, and that was indeed his first drop. Was the mountain he needed. So
Yeah,
off to a good
but
start.
Yeah, Sawyer's got some good stuff going on as well. No other lands, but has Disfigure, so once he draws that swamp, he can defend well. There's Blazing Crescendo, Fissure Wizard, and Forbidden Friendship. So he's got some good defensive speed, able to block at least the 1/1. That Aether Chaser is not going to be as blockable. Has now drawn a Disfigure as well, so both Disfigures in hand. And he really needs to get land, and he needs to get his swamps to defend versus this. So I imagine we'll be seeing the Fissure Wizard probably bottom one of his other red two drops.
Yeah, that. He might be in tough if he doesn't do anything soon, because Dan's draw is reasonably, it's got three aggressive creatures: Catcher's Avenger, Warlord's Elite, Scrapper Cohort, and then an Abrade to get something out of the way.
Mm.
So we might see Sawyer attack here and try to force the trade on the Aether Chaser, but I think if you're Dan, you just let it hit you. The trouble is it doesn't block Aether Chaser going the other way. So yeah, it looks like he did go for the attack, and yeah, Dan went for the no blocks. I think both of those decisions make sense. Forbidden Friendship. Okay, so he is going to get to make the servo, which is going to let him cast Warlord's Elite if that's what he wants. He did not draw land 4, but Warlord's Elite has pseudo convoke, where he's going to tap his 2/1/1s to play his 4/4, and that's going to be large and in charge. Just nothing on the board can tangle with it.
Mm-hmm. And now Sawyer has drawn an Akum Warrior, which might come down to just be another land, but unfortunately is not going to give him the black he needs for either Disfigure or his Garuda in hand. And,
yeah, both players keeping single color hands, and Dan drawing the second color immediately, and Sawyer not. That might certainly gotten Dan off to the better start. We're not at the stage where I get to say decided the game, but give it another turn or two. We're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
We're already
and
getting
so now,
the chumping starting. Oh, no.
Now we're going to be seeing a Blazing Crescendo.
Oh, but this is going to get blown out by the Abrade.
Oof. Wow. At the very least, small mercies for Sawyer, even though he got blown out. Though it was a blowout, he didn't lose a full card.
Right,
Creature.
He lost half of the card. Oh, and he drew the swamp. Okay, so we're going to have a game
exactly
at the very least, which is nice, because it would be, having Dan. I think Dan's due for some opponents who draw, a normal run for their decks.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the fun police, that's what Red White, they're here to do, right?
That's true. They're there to punish you if you stumble.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so now I think he's trying to decide, Fissure Wizard, do I get rid of one of these Disfigures? Do I get rid of Garuda? And
interesting.
Yeah, he's getting rid of one of the Disfigures.
So that means he's just saying, I'm just going to take a beating and try to limit the damage until I can get a 6-mana, play Garuda, and turn the game there.
Seems likely.
Yeah, he didn't think he was going to win a fair game from as far behind as he is, which makes sense to me, I think. Although this block is going to go better than his last one, so there's no trick or anything in Dan's hand. But Dan's going to be able to play either a Scrapbook Cohort or a Warlord's Elite, or even 2 spells if he wants to. He's got many options, and he's just going to run out the Cohort, it looks like.
Yeah, that makes sense, because if he draws another land, right, he'll have a little bit more action going on there, right?
Yeah, the unearth on that thing, when you're putting this much pressure on your opponent, is a real problem as well, that Sawyer is going to have to deal with somehow. And Dan just keeps drawing threats. Like, he's drawn Bullshock Splitter now. He's thinking he's at the point where he can just full swing, which...
Yeah.
Yeesh.
Meanwhile, I think Sawyer is going to likely use this Disfigure in order to hopefully not have a pump afterwards and be able to take Warlord's Elite off the field.
Okay.
And then he has a Wander in Death, which he might cycle to get a land, or he might bring... Well, actually, I believe Wander in Death is a Sorcery Suite, right? They didn't make them that good back then. So...
Yeah, that's correct.
So yeah, I think he's just going to be cycling this.
So this is just Garuda, take me home. Interesting. And Dan passed his second main.
Interesting.
I don't know if I understand that. Was that I don't know if that was a misclick, or if that was playing around something like a sweeper or something, but he just, there could be 2 more creatures in play than there are now. And I'm a bit befuddled why there aren't, to be honest.
I that has to be a click-through, right?
Maybe. I really don't know. So he kind of stranded 5 mana, but he's playing the creatures now. Like, Sawyer still needs to draw land, Garuda, hit something good.
And Garuda is still in hand.
Yeah.
It is not a land.
The other card?
The other card is Tentative Connection.
Ooh, that's not doing too much here.
No.
It's not even equipping the the halberd, which I guess doesn't do anything on defense anyway, so I sort of get it.
Yeah.
Dan, yeah, he's going to go for the unearth. If you block the biggest 2, you're taking 5.
Mm-hmm.
This is still very unpleasant. How much is the buyback in Coil Bug? Is it 4 mana or 5?
5, I believe. It was not cheap to do that.
Yeah, I think now you're at the point where your Gyruda hits can't just be a body. It's got to like have lifelink or kill something when it comes in or something. Because if you just like if it's just a blocker, then I think you're going to be too low for it to save you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be at 2. He's going to have 5 attackers, 6 attackers if he plays a Catcher's Avenger sitting in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 2 more blockers not doing it. It has to be an creature with an ETB that does something.
I mean, even a sweeper here, and unfortunately, good game. It's just a sparring construct.
Right. So Dan's on to the finals, and I'm going to stop this recording, and I'm going to see if we can get a stream from our other live game.